very strong background checks, very strong emphasis on the mental health of somebody, and we are going to do plenty of other things. Again, next week the governors are coming in from most of the states, and we're going to have a very serious talk about what's going on with school safety. Very important, and we're going to cover every aspect of it. There are many ideas that I have. There are many ideas that other people have, and we're going to pick out the strongest ideas, the most important ideas, the ideas that are going to work, and we're going to get them done. It's not going to be talk like it has been in the past.
President Trump, did you notice? He kept the focus on school safety. School safety. Welcome, everybody, to the Chris Salcedo Show. What has our political opposition shamefully using these kids? What have they been talking about? Gun control. That's what they've been talking about. President Trump is focused on school safety. And that is where we have been. How do we stop our children from dying in schools? And what is the best way to do that? Yesterday, we got a call from a listener who came on the program and alleged that one of the children, was actually a 28-year-old man, what they call a crisis actor. And we looked it up really quickly during the course of the phone call and said, man, everything that we're seeing doesn't indicate that anybody is disingenuous and not who they say they are in this debate, with the exception of those who were behind the scenes giving all the talking points to these kids. And I'm going to address the talking points here in a minute. But the idea that this hog kid is 28 years old, it's untrue, verifiably untrue. He's 17. He's getting a lot of talking points from the American left. But this idea that he's some sort of an actor, paid actor to come in and do this is been completely debunked. The result of that false story has been the American left basically saying, see, these right-wingers, and they've named Rush Limbaugh. These right-wingers, they say, will do or say anything to keep kids dying. Hey, we all know how much BS that is. But what really happened was some low-level staffer inside of, I think, Florida's governor's office started this rumor. Unsubstantiated. He's been fired. He's been fired, and rightly so. You know, when you've got the truth on your side, you don't have to make stuff up. When you start making stuff up, you turn into, well, libs. Now, so I wanted to address that, and of course, poor Limbaugh. He's the one that, because he is the biggest among us in the conservative talk realm, he has been tarred and feathered, and he didn't even say any of this. He wasn't even pushing this. So that's going on, number one. Now, number two, about the talking points. There is no question that these kids have adopted the left wing's approach to solving everything, government control. You have to forgive them. They haven't lived 2 decades yet. They've been brought up in a government-run school system that talks about the supremacy of government over the rights of the individual. They've been brought up in a government-run school system that says that you are supposed to listen to the government unquestioningly, rather than unless that government's telling you to stop abortion. Then you don't have to listen. Or unless that government's telling you that you can't do your left-wing craziness, then you don't have to listen. But if it's anything that's conservative, then you don't have to listen. But if it's all liberal, then listen. Obamacare, listen. So at any rate, you can forgive the kids. Those who are pulling the strings behind them I find to be the lowest of the low. This isn't going to work. This show hasn't pulled any punches, and we don't intend to, because our target isn't these kids. I feel sorry for these kids. We've got some sound bites today of just gut-wrenching testimonials as the president opened up the floor to listen to these people and allow them to vent their frustrations. And there's a Fox News report where, and if I can get to the report, I'll get to it. I don't know if it's going to be necessary for our purposes today, but if I think it adds to the discussion, I will. John Roberts at the end of the report says that that we've gone down this road before, but this has a different feel to it, and this is what's concerning to me. This is what's concerning to me because there's so much anti-Trump vehemence on the other side, irrational Trump hatred, that it may serve for these progressives to do what they've been trying to do for decades. Disarm you. Leave you helpless and reliant exclusively on government to save you and your children's lives. And they're after this. This is what they want to do. Let me give you a case in point. I listened to all these kids yesterday speaking at their rally. And they almost to the person. What we want is common sense gun control. Common sense. I mean, it was over and over and over again. Well, I was shouting at the radio saying, well, what does that mean? Common sense to me is a lot different than maybe what you might think or maybe what some Democrat might think. These kids have been instructed, don't get into specifics. Don't get into details. The minute you do that, the right-wingers will start insisting you come to the table with, facts. The right-wingers will insist that you start talking about that stupid document called the Constitution. They'll bring in their rights. And we all know conservatives don't deserve any rights. And your right to live is more than their right to defend their families. Rationalize that. Good grief. So that was proof positive to me that these kids have received instruction from professional left-wing agitators. Don't get specific. Just say common sense gun control or gun safety measures. And when you're asked by the press, if the press is even allowed to get within a few feet of these kids, well, I shouldn't say the press, the real press, the fake press, the Democrats, the dedicated Democrats who are not dedicated journalists, the instruction has gone out, oh, no, you can trust the folks at NBC. They won't ask you a tough question. You can trust the folks at CBS. They're not going to ask you a tough question. The folks over at CNN, they've not even read the Constitution. So don't worry about that. So I am convinced now more than I have ever been that not only the reason why this tragedy seems to be working and there seems to be movement toward doing something that we have been pretty successful at beating back, which is the suspension of our rights, is that there's so much anti-Trump hatred. And every opportunity that arises from events that happen, the American left will try to capitalize on it to defeat the president, they see opportunities to defeat your rights and your liberties by making it seem that if you even want to own a gun, you're somehow suspect. If you want to possess a firearm to defend your family, you're the problem. And they want to make, you've heard these kids say it, you're either with us or against us. If you take money from the NRA, it's a scarlet letter. What is that? Well, I can tell you what it is. It's naked politics. It's naked politics being fanned by left-wing agitators, community organizers like Resident Obama. So This is where we start off today, and I'm leading off the program with this. You guys are going to be shaken. I was shaken and moved by some of the testimony, some of the accounts from these people who lost loved ones in Parkland, Florida. And for me, as I think with the president, it makes us more determined to do something that works, because we all know the liberal progressives' gun control doesn't work. All it does is disarm the law-abiding and leave us vulnerable to the criminal element, which the Democrats are sympathetic to anyway. It leaves us vulnerable to the criminal element that doesn't follow laws these Democrats want to impose. Back in a minute. The Chris Salcedo Show on the Voice of Texas.
Addressing the issue of mental illness and tightening up background checks to make sure red flags don't fall through the cracks. The president also suggested military veterans could be hired to provide security in schools.
You'd have a lot of people that'd be armed, that'd be ready. They're professionals. They may be Marines that left the Marines, left the Army, left the Air Force, and they're very adept at doing that. You'd have a lot of them, and they'd be spread evenly throughout the school.
This is just the first listening session that the president will have at the White House this week. Tomorrow he meets with state and local officials, and then next week he meets with the nation's governors to talk about the problem. Brett, we have been here many times in the past, but at least on the surface, this time is beginning to feel different.
And there's a couple of ways to look at that. It can either be a good thing that we'll actually take some steps that will protect our kids, or you can look at that as a bad thing, is that the other side will be able to monopolize this momentum to denying you your right of self-defense. So we've got to be very careful. Keep our eyes on the prize. What's being bandied about, even by Senator Cornyn and by Chris Murphy, will not stop the shootings that took the lives of the kids in Florida, with the exception of perhaps the 19-year-old restriction, moving that age up to 21. They're saying there's no reason why a 19-year-old, an adult, should possess a firearm for self-defense. I don't know if that's going to fly. Let me get your guys' take on this. 281-558-5738. 281-558-KSEV. Mark, welcome to the Chris Salcedo Show. You're first up.
Good morning. I just want to lay a scenario out on the table and see what you think.
Okay.
Let's say the government does ban a whole class of weapons, tactical semi-automatic rifles, and let's say they're completely efficient at doing it, and they're out of the public hands. And then let's say 2 years later, a nutbag strolls into another school and kills, say, 7 people, and using something as simple as a shotgun or a handgun. I guarantee you the optics will be no different. The clarion call to ban weapons will be no less strong. And the banning of a class of weapons will have absolutely no impact. And I don't hear anybody talking about that. And I just want to get it out there and get your response, because it's not about school safety. It's about citizen rights.
Well, I think it's about both. I think it's how do you strike that balance between keeping our kids from dying and then also preserving our Second Amendment rights. And by the way, Mark, do you know what weapon was used in the most deadly school shooting in our nation's history?
No, I don't.
A handgun. It's a handgun.
And when I say it's not about school safety, I mean the argument from the left is they're not interested in school safety.
Oh, you and I know that.
They're interested in banning citizen rights.
True. No, actually, more to the point, the left is committed to advancing their political agenda. They're not committed to saving lives. They're not committed to preserving rights. They're committed to the acquisition of power and at bottom to be able to tell you and me what to do through the force of government. That's their main objective. Now,
and I just wanted to get that out there because it's a hollow result of banning a class of weapons.
Of course, and let's
I'll let you talk about it.
Well, no, Mark, before you go, let's take out your scenario one step further. Let's say we get rid of the AR-15 semi-automatic rifles, and then 2 years down the road, one of them pops up into a classroom and takes out some more kids. And then we find out this one came up through Mexico, was purchased illegally. And then, again, kids will be, I believe we would have a political victory, but then again, kids would be dead. And I'm not interested in sacrificing our children for a political victory the way the American left is.
Amen.
Thank you, buddy. I appreciate it. Fred, you're up next. Welcome to the Chris Salcedo Show. What say you?
Like we've talked about for years, this is simply the Democrat process of chaos and get everybody stirred up, everybody shaken, and the first thing they reach to is the group with the organized script that will soothe your hurt, will end your pain, will create the field of dreams for you. Just let us take away the guns. The guns did it. The guns did it.
Yeah. Blaming everything except for the cause of the problem.
Right. It's like, and they're taking the propaganda to the nth degree by saying, coming out here, there's a gallon of liquid spilled on the driveway and the road out here. We need the hazmat crew out here. We need to, take up the street. We need to replace the concrete and all that. But we didn't stop to analyze the fact that it was a bucket of water.
Yeah.
And that's what the problem is that it's not the gun, it is the person behind the gun. Whether they're going to have a gun, they're going to have a knife, they're going to have, a baseball bat. If you look at the causes and the resulting murders in this country, guns are in the lower echelon.
Well, Fred, let me ask you a question, because I think what you're talking about is the cultural rot that has led to an America that we used to have America with tons of guns per capita, and nobody ever thought about shooting up a school. Now here we are in a post-Columbine era where school shootings are becoming the norm, and it's alarming us. So you can look at that. What is causing that type of mentality that would lead to such low examination of conscience in our society? And that's definitely one thing. But then there's
Chris,
the other. Let me finish. The one thing that I want to shelve the cultural discussion temporarily to say, you know what? There's the part of me that says, I don't care what your mommy or daddy issues are. I don't care what your demons are. I just want to stop you. I want to put a bullet in you to stop you from killing our children. Then we can examine the causes later. Hey, Fred, can you hang on through the break? I didn't know I was that close to the break. Can you hang on?
Yes, sir. I'll hold on.
All right. I want Fred to respond to that, and all of you to respond to that as well. I just like I said, folks. This is multi-tiered. I want to put a bullet into these assassins, stop them from their killing, and then we can examine the cultural underpinnings later. Back in a minute. The Chris Salcedo Show. Hour 2 on the way. Next. All right, folks, welcome back. I want to continue my conversation with Fred. Fred, I didn't realize I was that close to the top of the hour break, so I wanted a chance to respond. The cultural underpinnings, very important for the long term, but right now I just want to stop these nutballs.
Well, Chris, here's the problem in the culture. You have all the rap music. You have the movies coming out of Hollywood that are R-rated and some of them X-rated with all the murder and violence, and it's glorifying the position that these people take. And literally, people watch stuff on TV, they watch it on the movies, they listen to it on the radio, and they go out and I'm going to get me some cop, I'm going to get me some whatever.
Well, two police officers have died in the last 12 hours.
My point exactly. The problem that we have, and this is where Trump is providing leadership in that instead of going directly at, the problem of the gun killing, we need to look at the underpinning reasons why we have this cultural lapse cultural malaise.
No, I'm not disagreeing. I'm just saying that it's a matter of priority. I mean, like I said, and you tell me if I'm going wrong here, that our first priority, without, putting these assassins on the couch and trying to figure out what their issues are, I'd rather kill them first and then worry about the cultural underpinnings second.
Well, Chris, you're gonna start a line, and I'll be second behind you.
Thank you, Fred.
I mean, you're not going, and I hate to say this. I'm one who believes that, everyone has redeeming qualities, but until you have been in the prison system, until you've seen some of the MS-13 gangs, until you see their hacks they can put on their gun, their gun grip, with the number of people they've killed, that's their priority in life. That's their belief.
Like
that's
I said, and the underpinnings and what causes all of that, I'm all for exploring and trying to figure out how we can get the culture back. And I think that with the Reverend Graham passing, I think there's a message there as we're in this holy season of Easter. Thank you, Fred. I appreciate the call. But at this point, I am not willing to have us sacrifice our kids while we're trying to figure that out. Let's save the kids first, and then we'll worry about why so many are lashing out. And I would submit to all of you that those who are depraved and devaluing of life are following the Democrat playbook. Tell me which political party doesn't value life. That's the Democrats. They have sponsored the slaughter of now close to 60 million children in utero without batting an eyelash. To sit there and say that the Democrat Party, as constituted today, cares about human life, I don't think you can make that case. 281-558-5738, 281-558-KSEV, evidenced by what they're putting out right now to stop. The answer to school shootings is common sense gun control. Well, what does that mean? It's a talking point designed to score political points, not solve the problem. We as a society must reject the Democrat view and must say, you know what, you can go politic all you want. I want to stop this from happening again. And I believe we ought to go with strategies that have been proven to work. Toby, welcome to the Chris Salcedo Show. I'm glad you tuned in. What say you?
Oh, you know what, Chris? You're 100% right. Kill them first, and we can figure it out later. The problem is, though, we got to where we are over decades. We're not going to solve the societal problem overnight. I mean, if it can be solved. The thing is, too, you had a caller, I don't know if it's you or if it was Lance, but one of you guys had a caller yesterday who called in and said that he thought that maybe there was some kind of agenda behind all this, like maybe it was actually being planned just to get their hands on our guns. And you know what?
Yeah.
That's crossed my mind before, too.
Well, when we have the leadership of the FBI and the CIA under President Obama behaving in the manner that they did for 8 years, betraying the trust of the American people as that government did, you can be forgiven for going, man, what has this government been up to? Because they've not been straight with me. They've lied to me. They've manipulated me for the last 8 years under Democrat rule. You can be forgiven, Toby, for being a little suspect.
Well, it sounds crazy. I know it. I mean, believe me, I'm not a big conspiracy theorist fan, but you know what? You got to look at what's been happening. And you look at how they jump on taking our guns every single time.
Yep.
I mean, tell me, how many of these schools have metal detectors at every freaking door? Probably none, right?
Well, this campus in general, I mean, was wide open and sprawling. And then I had to point this out, Toby. This kid walked in there with an AR-15. How does that happen? How does that happen?
Unbelievable, man. Unbelievable. I tell you what, they're not getting their hands on my guns. I tell you, no matter what. And I know a lot of Texans feel the same way. And you know what? The states need to start speaking up on this, too. And especially the state of Texas, we need to start stepping up now and saying, you know what? We don't care what the feds say. We're going to keep our gun rights in this state.
Well,
And I'm sorry those kids lost their lives. It's a damn tragedy and a shame.
It is.
But you know what? That's not my fault. That's not your fault, Chris. That's not any law-abiding citizen's fault. That's these nut jobs out there. And, we got to, like you said, put a bullet in their head. We'll figure out what caused it later. We got big problems in this country.
I agree.
Anyway,
Yeah, and
a lot, man.
You betcha, buddy. Thank you very much for the call. And you can hear Toby's frustration. And, these 18-year-old, these 16, 17, 18-year-old kids who are saying you're either with us or against us, and that gun control is the only solution. It's like, how much thought have you put into this? And why? Now, look, they've been through hell, and they're traumatized, and they're being exploited by the American left. But the question is, why would you want to disarm a mother of 4 from defending her and her children? Why would you want to do that? And this kid has never been confronted with that question, and probably won't be. But what about the rape victim? If a man was raping a woman, would you want to disarm her to make sure she couldn't defend herself and just allow her to be raped? This 17, 18-year-old kid would not be confronted with that question. But this is the real world that these children haven't experienced yet. And as a matter of fact, one would rationalize they've been treated to a little too much of the real world, with the consequences of the very people they're listening to, the consequences of these Democrats. Listen to this parent yesterday telling Trump that our kids deserve to be protected like our politicians, our banks, our federal buildings. Gosh, who's been saying that? Yeah, that would be me. Listen to this.
One possible solution, which may not be very popular, would be to have people in the school, teachers, administrators, who have volunteered to have a firearm safely locked in the classroom, who are given training throughout the year, have them raise their hands to volunteer for the training, and when something like this starts, the first responders are already on campus.
First responders are already there. And you know what? That point is so key, and I'm glad he used the term first responders. When trouble comes calling to you in your house, the first responders are not the police. Any good cop, which is the vast majority of them, will tell you, you are the first responder. Now, when you ask this kid, hey, when the criminal element takes illegal guns or illegal AR-15s and storms my home, what do you want me to defend myself with if you're advocating taking all the guns away? Well, I'm not saying take all the guns away. I'm saying common sense gun control. Well, what does that mean? I don't know. My left-wing handlers haven't told me yet. As a matter of fact, my left-wing handlers told me, don't get specific. Don't get, and don't worry, ABC, NBC, CBS, and CNN, they won't ask. And those Fox people, they probably won't ask either, but we'll keep them away from you. But don't go on conservative talk radio. Don't have a discussion on the topic. Don't offer any specifics. The minute you offer the specifics about what we really want, which is to get the guns, the minute you start talking about what we really want, which is to take away guns, that's when the right-wingers start coming up with that whole Constitution thing and that whole rights and liberties thing and that whole self-defense thing, and then we lose the argument, says the American left. Don't do that. Just say common sense gun restrictions, common sense gun laws, common sense blah. Just say it as often as you possibly can. It's nebulous. It's meaningless. But this is the discussion we've been reduced to having. I don't want to play. I want to stop our kids from being gunned down in schools. Who's with me? And by the way, nothing being proposed by Democrats or even John Cornyn and Chris Murphy would have stopped that shooting, would have stopped the Texas shooting or the South Carolina shooting. Yesterday we played a soundbite for you guys from a victim of Columbine. Oh yes, he's a victim. He's now a legislator. He says that if there had been guns on the campus at Columbine, his fellow students would still be alive. But we can't listen to him. You know why? But because he's a Republican and because he's actually advocating a solution to the problem. And one gets the sense Democrats don't want to solve it. Back in a minute, the Chris Salcedo Show, here on the Voice of Texas. Get to Mary Ramirez, who is standing by on Skype right now here on the Chris Salcedo Show for our weekly visit. Mary, welcome back to the program.
Good morning, Chris. How are you today?
Not too shabby. Thank you very much. By the way, folks, just this is a little inside baseball. If you hear a peep of a small child, that is Mary's little boy who is right off of camera. For those of you on the VIDA television network, you might hear him, but you won't be able to see him. So, Mary, welcome. What is on your plate this week?
Well, Chris, did you happen to catch this? It was sort of like a town hall type thing with Dana Lash and the sheriff from, I believe it was Broward County. Did you happen to catch that?
No.
She was, well, so she's obviously a spokeswoman for the NRA.
Right, and she's right here on AM 700 KSEV.
Exactly. And she was lambasted by this sheriff because she claimed, of course, to stand for these children that are expressing their concerns, and I believe that she is, of course. But the sheriff claimed that unless she expresses a desire for less guns, she's really not standing for these children. And when I thought about that statement, which was pretty powerful, when I thought about that statement in conjunction with what some of these kids, these young children, who, by the way, in my opinion, are being exploited by the media and by the left.
Me too.
These young high school kids, vulnerable, they've just been through a terrible situation. When I thought about what they've been saying, one student said, you're either with us or against us. So if you are like someone like myself or Dana or you who support the Second Amendment, somehow we don't want their safety. We don't care about their safety. And it just got me thinking about the real problem we have with the way that we're addressing this situation. We are not dealing in reality. It feels really good to run around and say, let's ban this weapon or that weapon, or let's ban, as President Trump said, bump stocks, which you pointed out this last week is, anyway, that's a whole nother discussion. It's really easy to say those things, right? But we're not dealing in reality. And Chris, I'm a parent. I've got my child right here. My child is at school. You've got children. Of course, I want to keep them safe, but I want to do something that's going to actually work. And unless we're dealing with facts, unless we're dealing with reality, we can't do that. I mean, for example, Chris, if as it relates to gun control and keeping people safe, if you were looking for, a cure for cancer, and the data showed you that time and again the route you were taking was failing, wouldn't you be considered insane if you continue to pursue that route? Because the data would tell you it's not going to cure cancer. It's not going to stop deaths. And I've got some statistics here from places that have enacted the type of strict gun control that these wonderful people on the left would like to bring here. So, for example, in Australia, where they had that mandatory gun buyback program. Okay, research out of the University of Melbourne down there suggests that it's done nothing to curtail firearm homicides. Or England and Wales, for example, which has some of the strictest gun laws in the world, and yet they've seen recently, and I quote, a 27% increase in gun crime, which isn't even supposed to exist.
Right.
A 26% increase in knife crime, and a 19% increase in sexual crimes, which means not only are they seeing an increase in crime that isn't even supposed to exist, but they're seeing an increase in violent crime overall, which means, guess what? Those people are still not safe. And the same applies to our kids here. So what can we do when we're trying to look and deal in reality? What can we do to keep our kids safe? How about if we use some of the billions and billions of dollars that our federal government wastes on an annual basis to do things like equip every school with a fob system? That alone would have kept Nicholas Cruz out of that high school in Florida.
No,
because he was suspended.
It's a fair point. One more thing about the Broward County sheriff, big Hillary Clinton supporter. He's a massively left-wing Democrat, and that's the reason why he has a dust up with Dana Lash, because, well, to be quite frank, his agenda is the Democrat agenda and not the American agenda.
Oh, which is amazing to me because, as a family, I come from a family of law enforcement, and they see this sort of thing every day. So it's amazing to me that someone who's in a position of authority within the law enforcement community, who sees all this, who has to actively deny what he's seeing in order to hold that position, is just amazing to me.
No, it's true. You know what? Those statistics are I bet you everybody within the sound of our voice are going to be eager to get their hands on this article of yours, because that's pretty powerful stuff, because the left wing is pointing to Australia. The left wing is pointing to Europe and their gun control initiatives. We got to do that. Problem is, when you disarm the people, you leave them, as we have always said, you leave them vulnerable to the criminal element that may arm themselves with illegal guns because they don't follow the law.
Exactly. And as I was trying to point out to somebody in one of the inevitable Facebook debates that ensues after one of these incidents, I was trying to point out to somebody that in reality, in order for gun control to work, you would have to get rid of every gun on the planet, and that's not going to happen. That's not reality. So we have to address the situation at hand. We have to assume that criminals are going to break the law, that criminals are going to obtain illegal firearms, and they're going to use them against our children. Okay, fantastic. How do we stop that? We lock our schools. We put metal detectors on the door. We put armed guards at the door. We arm our teachers.
Yeah. Well, you know what?
We can sit here all day long.
We protect everything else that is of value to us in this society with men and women with guns. Why not our kids? You know what? One more thing, too, Mary, is that at the border, this government and most governments are such buffoons. They can't stop illegal drugs. They can't stop illegal aliens. What makes anybody think they're going to be able to stop illegal guns?
Well, look at Nicholas Cruz, okay? How many times was he on law enforcement's radar? How many times was he on the FBI's radar? And
39.
Yet
39.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And
Well,
yet he still somehow was able to get a gun and use it, which means, again, we have to assume that criminals and evil people are going to find any way possible. Well, I'll give you a great example. I have a good friend whose little brother, well, he's not so little anymore, her little brother, his face is scarred from here to here, and he's got a slash across his hand from a 2004 machete attack at Valparaiso High School.
Wow.
In Indiana. That kid didn't have a gun, but guess what? A metal detector would have stopped him.
By the way,
But today,
more people die in the United States from knife attacks than AR-15 attacks every single year.
more children die walking to school every year than they do in so-called school shootings, which I'm not trying to in any way diminish the tragedy that is a school shooting.
Yeah.
But more kids die walking to school than they do at the hands of a gun in a school.
That's what we call perspective. And, of course, those don't get headlines the way the left wing, because it serves the left wing's agenda of getting the guns. Mary, what's the name of the piece?
Okay, it's up on my blog, afuturefree.com, and it's called "Wanna Keep Our Kids Safe? Here's How." And I'll tweet it out after this segment.
All right, folks, stick with us. Mary Ramirez, thank you very much. 281-558-5738, 281-558-KSEV. Back in a minute, folks, on the Voice of Texas. None of the gun control legislation that has been offered would stop the dying of those kids in schools. None of them.
No, it's not. And that's not never going to happen. You're going to continue to have guns. And when they start comparing about so many kids die in a car wreck or falling down the stairs, stop comparing. To me, just my opinion.
Well,
Stop
it's not
comparing
comparing.
it to the gun.
It's called perspective. You don't see a national outcry when a child dies because they were walking to school, but you see a national outcry and a call for action when they're gunned down in school, even though more kids die walking to school than kids who are shot. It's just it's called you've got to put these things in perspective. It's like I was saying with Mary, more people die every year from knife wounds than by wounds from an AR-15. But nobody's out there calling for a banning of knives.
But is they coming into school and just having a way with people's lives dealing with guns?
Well,
can you compare that though?
Well, you can compare that as far as what's actually causing people to die. But how many school shootings have taken place during the Trump administration? One, Parkland, Florida. Now,
that's the only one.
Well, that's
this
the only
year?
that's the only one since Trump took office. Now, of course, Barack Obama suffered through some of his own, But, you know, and I'm not just talking about school shootings. I'm talking about soft targets, schools, churches, so-called gun-free zones. I think all of these there should be no such thing as a gun-free zone in America. We should have security if we can guard our politicians and we can guard our money with armed individuals. We should at least be able to guard our kids. Don't you agree?
Of course, I agree. And I was listening to the gentleman talking about what you just got to playing. That was at the White House.
Yeah,
made common sense to me, man, and I felt it. You know, like you say, you're not gonna never see his daughter again.
Yeah,
you don't want this to happen no more. I don't want it to happen no more because I got a child.
I know. Well, I think parents of goodwill like you and me and that dad, we all hurt. That's why I have little tolerance for all of this nebulous. Well, let's just call it what it is. It's crap. Common sense gun regulation. What does that mean? Give me specifics. I'm offering a specific. I want to allow teachers to arm if they want, to get training if they want, and then if there are not enough teachers to satisfy the security requirements of each individual school, then the hiring of security. Good men and women with guns stop bad men and women with guns, period.
Yeah, the ones that want to do that, because
I don't want to force it.
Yeah, right. Yeah. Because everybody's not gun material. They can handle that. You know, because guns can be spooky if you're not ready for it.
Well, exactly. And would you want to tell a teacher that if you're not comfortable with it, go handle a gun? Absolutely not. That's an invitation for a disaster. So you only want those teachers out there who are confident, who say, yeah, I'll defend my children with something else besides my body. You're darn right I will. So you want somebody 100% committed to the safety of these kids and saying, I'm willing to put myself through the training and become proficient. That's the only caliber of individual you want. Hey, Mike, good discussion, man. Thank you very much. Vic, you're up next here on the Salcedo Show. Morning.
Morning, Chris. Tell you, if guns by themselves were the problem, then Sweden would probably not exist anymore, because I believe the majority of the population there, at least a high percentage of it, owns a gun by law, right? So I think we need to look at the real problem, which, again, there's a lot of contributors. Everything from parenting to understanding the child as well, because, again, a lot of these folks that have committed these atrocious killings, the profile surfaces after the fact that, yes, everyone knew this person was sort of a loner, didn't really have that many friends, that type of thing. So we need to look at that. I think the other thing, too, is that I think video games, to a large extent, play a part in this, because when you stop and think about it, a lot of these kids, especially that fit that type of profile, are isolated already, and they probably spend an inordinate amount of time on their video games. And a lot of these video games have to do with basically annihilating people, whether it's Call of Duty or other types, right?
Well, Vic, I think what you're describing
is obscured.
Yeah, I think what you're describing is something we covered earlier in the program. We probably weren't listening, but it's the cultural rot, right? I mean, it's the cultural rot where we've expelled God from the schools, where we've expelled anything that is a prompting of the conscience. In its place, we've put this valueless secularism that is championed by my political opposition, liberal extremist Democrats. And we've substituted a core, a belief system of the good people that we Americans are for the left-wing, do whatever you want, whatever feels good, baby, and have it subsidized by the federal government substitute. I mean, I think, and as we said earlier, that has definitely got to be part of the discussion. But right now, first things first, let's make sure the next nutball, who is a product, I believe, of the American left wing, who wants to inflict harm, make sure that they earn a bullet in the head for their trouble, so they can't victimize innocent children. Then we start to figure out, okay, why are we seeing this? Back in a minute, folks. I and a Democrat, we debate this whole gun control / solutions issues on gun violence. The Chris Salcedo Show on The Voice.
time for politics, pop culture, and proud pro-American conservatism. Strap yourselves in. Grab your coffee. It's time for the Chris Salcedo Show on AM 700 KSEV, the voice of Texas.
All right, folks, welcome back. Hour 3 underway here on the Chris Salcedo Show. 281-558-5738, 281-558-KSEV. You folks on hold, stick with me because I want you guys to hear this. Yes, I do have Democrat friends. Ellis Henican is a New York Times best-selling author, Pulitzer Prize-winning newspaper columnist, popular Democrat TV pundit as well. He's also the voice of Stormy on the hit Cartoon Network series C-Lab 2021. His latest book is Trumpitude, The Secret Confessions of Donald's Brain. Ellis, welcome back to the Salcedo Show.
Hey, are you embarrassed to have me as a friend?
Not at all. I keep on telling them I have Democrat friends, and of course I have yet to produce them. But I think you might be my first.
Good to meet you. Good to talk with you as always.
All right, so let's you and I have this conversation. I called you up yesterday because I wanted to have this debate about where I see this going. And what's actually being talked about. You and I agree that we want to stop mass school shootings, yes?
Of course, everybody agrees with that.
Right,
sure.
Exactly. So now how we go about doing that is the debate point. What do you favor?
So here's where I start the conversation. I think that, yes, there's a Second Amendment. Yes, it gives us some rights, but it doesn't mean we can own anything and do anything. So it seems to me reasonable people need to say, what are some common sense steps we can take to protect lives? I've got a handful of them. You may have a few, but let's start there. Let's figure out what, in practical terms, we can do that will reduce the chances of these things happening.
Now, first off, folks, Ellis isn't local. He's not in Houston, so he hasn't heard our conversation today. Ellis, I got to bring you up to speed because I have been seeing a lot of these kids who I believe are being prompted by a lot of folks on your side. They have come up and it's almost as if it's scripted. Common sense gun regulation, common sense gun control, common sense gun safety. It's all from the left-wing lexicon and playbook, which is, by the way, when you say common sense anything, it's meaningless because what my impression of common sense and your impression of common sense is different. So let's talk about something concrete on your side, then I'll offer something. What do you think we ought to do to stop school shootings?
I'll give you several examples. By the way, if you think you and I can control a bunch of 16-year-olds, you're crazy. Those kids are doing whatever the heck they want to do.
Well,
and that's true of all 16-year-olds.
Okay, so
let's eliminate assault weapons, right? There's no reason for civilians to own military-style weapons that shoot 20 and 30 rounds in a burst and kill people. There's no reason that civilians ever need to own those guns. Let's outlaw them tomorrow, as we did for many years in this country.
Okay, so let's stop. Let's stop right there. Let's talk about that because, first off, you understand that the term assault weapon doesn't apply to anything civilian. Assault weapons, a military doesn't.
Fair enough. Listen, we can work out the details of the definition. Smart enough people can do that.
Okay.
Did it in law for many years. That's a red herring. Let's agree. You and I would know what we're talking about.
Right.
Let's eliminate it. Let's make them illegal
All
right now.
How many? What is the greater culprit as far as of deaths of students? Is it knives or is it the AR-15 rifle?
I don't care. That's not. I'm not going to.
Of course. Well, again, the bigger culprit. The bigger culprit is knives. Why are we talking about?
I don't care.
Why are we talking about banning an AR-15, which is not the primary cause of kids dying in schools?
I don't buy that argument. That's that whataboutism. Well, hey, a lot of kids can't read. Isn't that worse? We're talking about one thing. Let's solve it one at a time. Not everyone. The vast majority of these multi-victim school shootings are done with rapid fire, what I would call an assault weapon. You can call it something else, but we know that's one of the major culprits here.
No, that's not true. Actually, the vast majority, the greatest school shooting or the largest school shooting as far as death toll is concerned was perpetrated with a handgun. The AR-15 is not the culprit.
Not a good argument.
Well, I'm sorry. Why don't we solve the problem instead of us because it looks scary?
Solve the problem.
Well, of course I do.
Chris, no, this is what you're doing because every time someone like me brings up a practical solution, you want to steer the conversation in another way.
Because it's not based on the facts in evidence. That's all.
So let me continue.
All right.
Let's eliminate these large magazines. There's no reason for any civilian to possess a weapon that can shoot 15 or 20 or 30 or 100 rounds at a time. You agree with that, don't you?
No, I don't agree with that at all.
No.
And here's the reason why. When I look at restricting the amount of rounds inside of a weapon, let's say you do what California did and you restrict it to 10. Well, that means you're going to have 5 10-round magazines that you bring in to, and let's just take the school shooting because this is the context we're having. The guy brings in these magazines and they've been reduced to a size of 10. So he's got 10 or 15 of them and he reloads. Every expert will tell you the major amount of killing is done in the first 5 minutes that these guys are there. So all they got to do, since there's nobody there to oppose them with a firearm, they will simply reload and continue their assault. That does not solve a problem. That doesn't solve a problem.
Chris, you're making excuses. It takes time. It slows someone down. It's a legal tool to use when you stop the guy on the way to the school. There are a whole number of reasons that makes it more difficult. No single solution will solve everything, but a number of solutions together will reduce the likelihood of our kids being killed. Quit doing this whataboutism.
Whataboutism. I know that's a favorite tactic of the folks on the left to say when you start introducing facts that it's whataboutism. Let me introduce my solution.
The subject.
Let me introduce.
Chris, you're changing.
Well, let me introduce my solution, and then I'll get you to comment.
You want to have more guns, probably.
Well, hold on a minute. Ellis Henican is our guest right now, folks. New York Times best-selling author. Name of the latest book is Trumpitude: The Secret Confessions of Donald's Brain. Here's what I would like to have happen. I would like to have armed security on the campuses and also allow teachers who are 100% committed to protecting their kids and who either had former military training or police officers or be willing to be trained to be able to be the first responders so that no matter what size the magazine is, no matter what weapon is used, that these perpetrators will be met with force so we don't have a 17-child body count. What's wrong with that?
Well, let's look at it a little. What kind of weapons would you give them? Would you give them AR-15s or would you have them have handguns? I
would say as far as practicality speaking, I would like to have them have a handgun in close quarters.
Okay, so they're gonna have a shootout with a crazed guy with an AR-15 and 30-round magazines with a handgun in a crowded hallway of school children. You think that's going to make things better?
Absolutely. It's Ellis, look, I got to tell you that it's a heck of a lot harder to train your fire on innocent kids who are disarmed when somebody's firing back at you. And all it will take is a trained teacher to go after it. By the way, all these psychos, they're not trained. They don't have proper training. All they get in there is they start willy-nilly and shooting. And I think it would be eminently preferable to have somebody who was armed and able to fight back rather than say, hey, look, another gun-free zone. I'm a duck. Pluck me.
You can't say that word on the radio.
Pluck. It's the P-L-U-C-K.
Oh, pluck.
Yes, I'm a duck.
I know things are a lot. Things are a lot looser than that. No.
But again, the idea that you say it's preferable to leave them like lambs to the slaughter as opposed to have somebody fighting back, I don't think passes the smell test.
Let me give you a couple of reasons why I think it's a mistake. First of all, I've met teachers, and I love my teachers, but I can't think of any of them that I would like to have be armed. Secondly,
I know plenty. By the way, let me just introduce into evidence that we have plenty of teachers who have reached out to the Chris Salcedo Show saying, and as a matter of fact, here in Texas, we have school districts who have signs out in front of their schools that say, for all of you would-be nutcases, we are armed and we will defend our students. And we make these soft targets or these gun-free zones into hardened targets. If we guard our money and we guard our politicians, Ellis, why can't we guard our children with men and women with guns?
Because it'll end up killing more of them. Listen,
that's not true. You have no evidence. You have no evidence to support that.
You have covered police long enough to know that the vast majority of police bullets that are shot miss the target. These are trained official law enforcement officers. Very difficult under pressure for even a highly trained professional in an actual situation, not target practice, not some guy hanging out at the range. Very, very difficult in a live fire situation in a crowded environment for someone to shoot effectively against a moving target in a volatile hyperactive situation. You know that. You've covered enough police shootings over the years to know that is a very, very difficult thing to do in real life. And I don't think teachers, by and large, are particularly well equipped to do it.
Well, again, I'm not saying
that's true,
no. Wait a minute. I'm not saying throw these teachers in there with just give them a handgun and say go defend the kids. That's not what I'm suggesting at all. And also, let's go with what works. Gun control doesn't work.
Of course it does.
No. Wait a minute. The Florida shooting. What happened in Sutherland Springs, what happened with Dylan Roof in South Carolina, that was all failures of government. The same laws that you Democrats told us would protect us, government failed, and I don't want to leave the American people disarmed the next time government fails. And by the way, I got to get going, but the last thing I'll offer to you is that Israel, they are doing this. They arm their teachers. They go through proper security training, and they don't have mass shootings. Ellis Henican, everybody.
You know what? I'm in New York with the toughest gun laws in America, and we have far less shootings than you guys do in Texas.
Yeah, well, you might want to check those violent gun stats, by the way.
Far less, buddy.
Ellis Henican, folks, New York Times best-selling author. The name of the book is Trumpitude, The Secret Confessions of Donald's Brain. Back in a minute, folks. The Chris Salcedo Show, your take on all of this next. And that's going to do it here for the Chris Salcedo Show worldwide on the VIDA Television Network. I want to remind everyone that I think I'm one of the few individuals on television who actually allows you to directly interact with me unfiltered live. All you got to do is call AM 700 KSEV 281-558-5738, 281-558-KSEV from the hours of 7:30 a.m. Eastern until 10 o'clock Eastern, and let your voice be heard. Maybe you don't think we covered something fairly, or maybe you don't think we've covered something enough. It's your chance to weigh in. You can also do so via social media. Go to chrissalcedo.com. All of our contact information is there, or you can do it live in real time during those same hours at Chris Salcedo TX. Even off hours, we respond to Twitter, and it's a good chance if you make a compelling argument, it'll be featured on the show if I'm not on the air at the time the following day. Thank you so much for tuning in to the Chris Salcedo Show worldwide here on the VIDA Television Network. We'll see you next time.